going to talk about something called Hilchos Boreh today. It's a dimension of Shabbos. One of the Lamates Melachos. We're not going to go through all the Lamates Melachos, but there are certain of them that are very central, very important. The reason why Boreh is so important is because it's got a very practical ramification with regards to eating food on Shabbos.
What's Hilchos Boreh?
Hilchos Boreh are the halachas of separating something from another thing in order to be able to eat it. You know what? We'll see later on, not just eating things, it's got to do with other things as well. Hilchos Boreh, there is an inyan on Shabbos where you're not supposed to separate one thing from another thing, especially if one of the things is something that you don't want. It's going to have ramifications not just for food, it's going to have ramifications for, clearing things up and putting things away. And but we'll start off with food because that's for sure the most important, the most central inyan over here. So let's say, for example, you've got a plate of food and you've got food on your plate and you've got bits of something which is not food. So, for example, you've got chicken on the bone. Here in Israel, they actually sell bones with bits of chicken on it. You might have fish with bones in it. Here in Israel, of course, they have bones with bits of fish on it. You might have watermelon with pits in it. What have we got? We've got the inyan of Boreh. You've got food on your plate, and there are bits and pieces inside of the food that are not edible. So again, bits of meat that have gristle inside of them, chicken on the bone, fish with bones inside of it, all that kind of stuff. How can you separate one from the other? So it's possible to separate the food, but there are two conditions. First of all, you need to separate it without using a special utensil to do it, and you have to separate it with the knowledge that you're going to eat it immediately. We'll talk about immediately in a moment what that means halachically, but it's not something, you can't decide, for example, here, I'll give you an example. You've got an egg, a hard-boiled egg with a shell on it. The shell is what's known as pasolis. It's something which can't be eaten, and the egg is what you're interested in. If you want to shell the egg, I don't know, in the morning to be able to eat it in the afternoon, that would be forbidden to do on Shabbos. If you want to eat your egg, you want to have the egg now in this meal coming up, that's okay, right? So you can peel it with your hands and you can have the egg ready to be eaten almost immediately. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But if you want to have the egg, let's say for the third meal on Shabbos, and you want to peel it on Shabbos morning because you want to get yourself ready, that's something that you shouldn't be doing. That already is a problem. What does it mean when it says immediately? Right now, obviously we're talking halachically over here because everyone here in this room understands what immediately means, right? Immediately means right now. However, according to the halacha, immediately means the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is oichloi la'alta, which means it should happen now, and that means that it doesn't mean like within a few seconds having done it. It's not like you've got somebody peeling an egg in the kitchen and then you've got to rush it into the dining room, otherwise it'll be too late. But rather within a certain amount of time that it's going to be eaten. Bless you. Disui. Did I get it right?
No.
How do you say it?
Disui.
I just said disui.
What's the difference between
Wait, there's an a at the beginning? Adisui? Adisui.
Englishman learns French.
You know what? By the time I get this right, it'll be the summer and you'll stop sneezing. Yes.
How about if you peel the egg and your intention was to eat it immediately, whatever that means, and one bite in the egg, you're like, I really don't feel like eating this. Can you save it for later?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, once you've taken a bite out of it, then you've done whatever you set out to do, you've done. If your intention is to eat the egg, and then as it's sitting there on your plate, you think to yourself, I don't really want this. Maybe I'll have it later on. Then that would also be okay, but not something that you should plan to do. It's what's called b'di'evad, right? Which means that as you were peeling the egg, your intention was to eat it now. Didn't work out for whatever the reason. Maybe you forgot about it, or again you saw it and you didn't have a great desire to eat it at that moment. Then that's okay. You can eat it later on. Yeah.
There's a pack of bizzy that you can get where basically it's half biz and half bamba. Let's say you put it in a bowl and you don't want the bamba.
Oh, we'll talk about it. Hold on a second. We'll talk about different kinds of foods not in a moment, because Boreh is going to have repercussions also for foods, not just food and something which can't be eaten. Right. So, for example, chicken and bones, or the egg and the shell, it's also going to have a repercussion for two different kinds of food, one kind of food that you do want and one kind of food that you don't want right now. We will talk about it. The la'alta means over here halachically normal preparation time for a meal. Right, which means, I don't know, whatever, maybe half an hour before lunch begins, then that's when things start getting prepared in order, the salads get put out, all that kind of stuff. At that point, it would be permissible to prepare whatever needs to be prepared. You'll be able to shell your egg, and you'll be able to get rid of, put it out on the table a little bit later on. That's okay. What shouldn't be done again is that there shouldn't be a big gap. The Mishnah Brura actually writes that he writes like this, that you shouldn't start preparing the Shabbos meal in the morning until davening is over. Right, so we got to, however long it takes to get home and get going, probably I would say about a half an hour is definitely within the realms of reason. Right, you can show your eggs within a half an hour from the time that you want to get going. More than that, I think is probably not okay. However, you need to, again, you've got to be honest about what you're doing over here, which means that it's not okay to prepare the meal. Let's say, for example, you're going to prepare the meal and then you're going to go off to your neighbor's making a kiddush, right? So you have to go in and you have to say Mazel Tov. So that point, that's already considered to be a break. You can't prepare, go off to the kiddush and then come back. Right, which means that you can prepare all the bits and pieces that can be prepared without getting involved in the halachas of boira. But if you've got things that are going to require separating what's called the food from the, the oichel from the ptzolis, the food from the non-edible stuff, then you should do that when you come back from the kiddush and not before you go to the kiddush. A lot of blank faces out there. Okay, whatever.
You should do it before and not after the kiddush.
No, we'll try that one again. You should do it after and not before. However, if you prepare the meal, you get everything ready, and then you suddenly remember, oh, hold on a second, my neighbor's making a kiddush, and I have to go in and say Mazel Tov, then that's okay, right? There's no problem with eating the food that's been prepared, even though you made a break between the two.
Are you talking about the Chatchila B'Yevet?
So over here, the emes says that it really is lechatchila, because when you set about to prepare everything, you've forgotten all about the kiddush. Right? It's only after you were done that you suddenly remembered that you're going to have to go to the kiddush, and if you start your suda, there's no way you're going to be able to get there. Then at that point, it's okay to go to the kiddush and come back again, and it's okay to eat the food. That's 100% okay.
Are you saying that basically the situation is as follows? Let's say you basically have to the second you put your food down, you have to eat.
No, but you've got to eat it within a reasonable amount of time.
So for example, you can't. Let's say I come home, right? I come home from shul and there's kiddush on the table, biscuits, cakes, whatever.
Yeah.
At the same time, the table is set.
Yeah.
What's the situation there?
So I think again, if you're planning on eating pretty much after you finish, you're going to make kiddush and then you're going to start your food, your suda. So you're going to have a piece of cake, and then you're going to make your bracha achrona, and you're going to wait whatever, just like 10 minutes or 15 minutes until you start the meal, then I think that's okay. If you're going to be waiting longer than that, then it's better to prepare the foods that have a problem of boira. It's better to prepare them afterwards rather than before.
So what's the problem with boira? What would you say that those kind of foods are?
Here again, anything that you're separating. You're separating food from something which is non-edible. So, for example, you're making
avocado,
but avocado. See, the way to peel avocado without it being a problem is to leave some of the avocado on the skin. Right. Once you've done that, it's a lot less problematic. An egg is a better example, because when you take off the peel, you're taking off the whole peel from the egg. Normally, the egg is left whole, right? So, if you're talking about something like that, what about for here another example? You're making a chicken salad. Right, and you're going to take the chicken off the bone in order to put it into the salad. So over there, if there's going to be a big gap over there, you should wait.
Yeah. Right,
and you shouldn't. You should do it closer to the meal rather than earlier on. Yeah.
What if you don't want to eat the egg yolk because that's cholesterol?
Here, we're going to talk about food within food. Right? What are you going to do when you've got two different kinds of food? One of them you want, one of them you don't want. which is going to include egg white and egg yolk. Although according to research that's coming out now, apparently eggs are not as bad for you as they originally thought that they were. That's just one of those, these things come in fads, right? So now you'll start eating masses of egg yolks, and then, in 10 years' time, they'll tell you egg yolks are terrible, and then you'll be sorry that you ever ate them. Yeah?
Are we going to get into discussions about tools, like hands and forks, and like are they discussed as tools?
Say that again?
Are we going to talk about
Preparation
tools?
you mean?
Tools?
Yeah, like,
Well,
well, like a hand has like a certain designation in terms of like tool and fork.
Oh, I thought you meant like electric drills and hammers.
Yeah,
And
are those appropriate for use?
it depends on how, it really depends on how tough the gefilte fish is, I think.
I've seen this.
I have on many occasions, especially when I was a bocher in yeshiva, trying to cut through yeshiva schnitzel with plastic knife and forks was it was a production. What can I tell you? Bits of forks, would go flying everywhere, and then you have to try and find another one.
I once went to my Chabad Rabbi for a meal on Friday night. I went through 5 knives and forks in one meal.
You should have tried eating the food instead, really. It's like, delicious fork. Thank you. Can I have another one? Oh, good. Okay.
Rabbi, what about sardines when you're pulling out?
What about sardines?
Let's say
Don't tell me anybody eats sardines. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
But Moshe, what century are you living in? Come on, cut it out. We'll talk. In Mitzvah Hashem, we'll talk about the problems of opening up cans and what you can do and what you can't do. Oh, I guess pun intended. I guess, right? What you can do and what you can not do. We'll talk. I think I'll do that again. Actually, what you can do and what you cannot. No.
No, you have to have a break.
Sardines come in a can. But what you can't. Never mind. Okay.
I normally just make them appear out of thin air.
Sardines.
Yeah, pretty much anything.
Well, what a waste! What a waste of talent.
No.
You know what you remind me of? There's a very famous joke they tell about a Russian who's walking down the street, completely drunk. Out in the middle of nowhere in Siberia somewhere.
That does remind me of him.
And and he finds a bottle. So he opens up the bottle, thinking there's a drink, and a genie comes flying out.
Whoa.
And the genie says to him, "Okay," he says, "I'll give you 2 wishes, whatever you want." So the guy's thinking, he says, "I want a bottle of vodka that never finishes." So the genie says, "Okay, here it is. It's all yours." And there's a bottle over there. And the genie says, "What else do you want?" And the fellow's thinking, he says, "I don't know." He says, "This is really all I've ever wanted." He says, "Can I think about it?" So the genie says, "No problem." He says, "I'll come back in a week and you can decide what you want." Anyway, all week he's drinking this vodka bottle that never ends. And the genie comes back after a week and this guy's completely drunk. Absolutely. And the genie says to him, "What do you want? You've got to make up your mind." He says, "You know what?" He says, "I'll have another bottle just like this."
That cannot possibly be me because I only drink whiskey.
Oh.
Well played, Daniel.
I think you're being a little inflexible over here. That's what I think. My mother had an uncle who used to start off every morning with a tumbler of whiskey. Not a shot, a cup of whiskey.
Ah, good.
That's how he started his day, and you can imagine it only went downhill from there. And on Pesach, he used to suffer terribly because on Pesach he can't drink whiskey. So my uncle, when he came back, he was learning in yeshiva in Montreux in Switzerland, and he came back with a bottle of Slivovitz. Now Slivovitz is plum brandy. It's like 1,000,000% proof. It comes in reinforced glass bottles because otherwise the thing will crack. You can run your car on it. And you don't have to write down Slivovitz. You'll be able to remember that, won't you?
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, they all spent Pesach together. They're in some hotel somewhere. And my mother said the first morning of Pesach, the whole hotel was woken up by this fellow screaming, "He's trying to kill me! I'm going to die!" Because he'd taken his regular amount of whiskey and he just used Slivovitz instead, which is at least twice as potent as whiskey is. And apparently it didn't settle very well. Anyway... Why am I telling you this? But because obviously this fits in very neatly with Hilchos Borer, And if you've had a tumbler full of slivovitz, then you'll also understand why it fits into Hilchos Bora. But if you won't, then you probably won't realize what the connection is. Okay, we're gonna carry on over here. What if you've got two different kinds of foods that you want to eat? Two different kinds of foods. You want to eat one of them, and you don't want to eat the other one. So you're talking about what is it?
There's bamba packet. With
Yes.
half bisley and half bamba. And if you only want the bisley.
Half bisley and half bamba. So first of all, I would suggest that it's probably economically sounder to buy a packet of bisley than to buy a packet of half bisley and half bamba. You've got two different kinds of foodstuffs. Either bisley and bamba that are mixed together, or nuts and raisins that are mixed together. What do people eat in Texas? What's
Steak.
Or you've got steak and steak,
No Bambi.
steak and steak mixed together.
What do you do to Bambi?
What do you do? What do you do with something like that, right? So, even though they are both edible, right? Whether it's nuts and raisins, or looking around the room, whether it's just a mixture of various nuts, whether it's bamba and bisley, whatever it is, right? The problem is one of them you don't want to eat and the other one you do. Then at that point, the one that you do not want to eat is now classified as being pasolet. It's got exactly the same classification as the bones on the chicken or the peel, the shell around the egg. And you've got to be careful how you're going to take whichever one you want to eat, right?
1 second. Does that affect the rest of people eating that particular thing?
No,
or
not
just
at all. Quite the opposite, actually. Which means if you've got somebody who you want to eat the bisley and they want to eat the bamba, then you're both eating the things that you want to eat. That's not a problem at all. The problem for you is the bamba, and the problem for them is the bisley.
Can you change your mind? Like
Only
go
if you
Bamba
have
and then
one.
You're like,
Yes, you can change your mind.
okay.
You definitely can. And for example, if you ate the bisley and decided that you didn't want to eat the bisley, you can change your mind about that as well. So what does that mean? First of all, if you want both of them, but you want to eat one of them first, right? So let's say, for example, you are a bisley fiend, but if there are no bisleys left, then you will lower yourself to eat bamba as well.
No.
Then if the answer is really no, then you should not be buying this stuff. You really shouldn't. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, right? But if you've got, nuts and raisins, whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. But you want one of them you want to eat first, but you're going to eat the second one afterwards, then that's not called boira anymore. That's okay. You can take out the bits that you want without being the least bit concerned about whatever else is there. And you can separate them, right? With your hands. You can say, here, I'm going to put the raisins over here, and I'm going to put the nuts over here. I'm going to eat the nuts first, and then I'm going to eat the raisins afterwards. Very often, kids do that very often. They like, they separate their food into bits and pieces. I used to separate my food as well when I was a kid and just didn't eat the bits I didn't want. Whatever, okay, but you're allowed to do it, so long as you do it in the halachas of Bora that we just learned before, which means that you're going to eat it almost immediately, and you're not going to use a special kind of a utensil in order to separate things, right? So, for example, you've got, I'm trying to think of an example that would be okay, but let's say you've got something in a liquid, and you want the something that's in the liquid is going to be taken out. You've got spoons that have holes in them, right? In order to be able to drain out liquid, it would be a problem to use that on Shabbos. You can stick your hand in there and you can take it out, right? But you should not be using something that's going to a utensil that's been made especially to make some kind of a separation between things.
Can you give an example of that?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like a colander, maybe a sieve. Something with holes in it that's going to separate the bigger things from the smaller things. That kind of thing would be a problem. I'm trying to think again if you've got
Slotted spoon.
a slotted spoon,
Or cholent.
right? A slotted spoon. We'll talk about that in a minute. What do you do when you've got things that you want from the soup and things that you don't want from the soup? Things that you want from the cholent, things you don't want from the cholent, right? But yeah, if you've got a slotted spoon would be a good example, right? Which means that you're not interested in the, you want to pick out the knedlich from the soup, right? And you don't want the soup itself. Using a slotted spoon, which is a spoon that's got lines in it that will allow the liquid to drain out in order for you to pick out the vegetables or to pick out the knedel, if you're not going to eat the soup, is a problem. Taking a ladle and just taking out a knedel, and it's going to come out, by definition, it's going to come out with some of the soup, that's okay, right? But taking some kind of utensil which is going to make all the liquid drain out and leave you just with that piece, that's a problem. What you want?
I'm just wondering, if you're pretty sure your hosts aren't looking, can you use your hand? And like
For what?
Hand
For what?
to pick out from like a lukewarm soup.
Only if you didn't wash your hands.
I think if your hosts aren't watching, you can really do whatever you want, actually.
But like,
is it the correct thing to do? I think probably not.
like
Just for halachically, yeah, I don't know. I mean, spreading salmonella to the rest of the family is probably not the best way to get invited back again.
assuming that you've washed your hands.
I had a friend. You notice in the past tense. I had a friend once. I'm not going to tell you his name, so you can't go to him to verify whether he went round to a friend's house. He went round to somebody's house on Shabbos with a friend of his. This is not something I recommend doing. I really don't. And his friend at the end, he didn't know, but his friend put a spoon. It was in the summer, and he'd taken off his jacket and he'd hung it, on the back of the chair, and he didn't know, but his friend had taken a spoon and put it in his pocket. And they get up, say thank you, they finish benching, they puts on his jacket to go, and as they're about to walk out of the door, his friend says, "Excuse me 1 minute," and he starts patting him down and pulls this spoon out of his pocket. And he says to his host, he says, "I'm terribly sorry." He says he's always doing this. My friend is somebody who is never ever lost for words, and he said he did not know what to do with himself. He was so embarrassed. So it's not something I recommend that you do, but if you do it, it's pretty funny. Okay, what's that? Just because we were talking about spoons, I thought I'd slot that one in. Thank you. No, that was yesterday's joke. If you want to see him laugh about today's joke, you're going to have to come back tomorrow. That's there is no tomorrow. Oh, there is tomorrow. Yes, for sure. Okay. Anyway, so if you've got foods there that you want to eat and you are going to eat them, it's no problem to separate them. There's no problem to make two different piles, so long as you're going to eat the other one almost immediately after you've finished the first pile. Okay. Again, Boira, we're back to the same things that we spoke about before. If you're going to, you've got nuts and raisins in your bowl and you want the nuts now and you want the raisins for shalashudas, that's a problem. Which means that you can pull the nuts out and eat them one by one, but to pull them out and start separating and making different piles because the raisins you're going to have much later on, that's a problem of boira, and that's something that you should not be doing. Boira is not just food related. It's really related to all kinds of things as well. It's really related. Huh?
Smells? I don't know.
No. Games. If you play a game on Shabbos, right, which for some of you is probably going to be an uphill struggle because it really requires somebody else to play with, which requires some kind of a relationship of some kind. So maybe we should just skip over this particular halacha because I don't see any practical application to it.
The word friend.
No, let's not. Let's not push this. An acquaintance.
No, but we're too busy studying. We're not going to play games.
Except for settlers.
Okay. For those of you, and this is really, people are falling down by the wayside over here. There's nobody left for this halacha to be addressed to because you either need a friend to do it with or if you're not studying, which discounts almost everybody, right? But it's here on the list, so I'm going to say it anyway. Games normally come, split up into different bits. You've got the cards in one place and you've got the little pieces in another place. If you've got some games have lots of pieces to them. It's a problem after you've finished the game. If you're not going to play again, it's a problem to put everything back neatly inside of the box, right? Which means like this. I don't know what game has got lots of pieces. Help me out. Huh?
Scrabble.
Chess.
Monopoly.
Mousetrap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quidditch.
Cholon,
Backhand.
choose whichever game appeals to your.
Rummy Club.
Okay, please, everyone should choose their own game quietly, please. And solitaire.
Snap.
What's the problem? The problem is like this. Once you finish playing, I don't know, Monopoly, right? Once you finish playing Monopoly, there's a whole bunch of cards, different kinds of cards. There are, there are Risk and there are Chance and they're all different. Am I doing this right?
Risk.
Is Risk not?
That's the only
Risk is a
props
game.
I'm ever going to give you.
Yeah?
Risk.
Thank you.
No.
Okay.
We're talking about in Monopoly.
Ah, I retract that.
Okay, good.
It's very
Huh? It doesn't matter. After you finish the game, you can't separate all the bits and put them into their little compartments. That's a problem with Boiro and Shabbos. You can if you're going to start another game again, right? So if you've played a game and you want to play it again, and then that's okay. That's okay to sort everything out and get it into the right place. Otherwise, you should just put them all. Just pour it all into the box, and on Motzei Shabbos you can sort it all out if you wish to. What's the, it's got there are all kinds of repercussions over here. A kid's playroom. Kids, their toys by the end of the Shabbos afternoon are strewn all over the place. Asking a kid to clean up the room is a problem. I mean, again, being a youngest child, if you ask me to clean up the room, that's a problem in and of itself. Right? It's beyond my comprehension. But in general, asking a kid to clean up the room and take all the bits and pieces and put them where they go, it's a problem. The only way that it's possible to do it is to do it toy by toy. Right? You can pick up a toy from the floor, and that toy can then be put away wherever it goes, and then go back and pick up another toy and put that wherever that goes, but not collecting up, I don't know, all the trucks and then collecting up all the all the knuckle dusters and then collecting up all the mace sprays and that kind of thing, because that's not, that's a problem of Boira. I'm also not quite sure why your kids would be playing with these things to begin with, but whatever. How can you put things back? You can put them back one by one, but you can't collect up different kinds that are all the same, right? So again, you can't tell your kid, go pick up all the trucks and put them back in the truck box, right? But the kid can walk around the room and pick up one by one and go and put it in the truck box, and then come back and pick up the next thing. And if it's a truck, it can go in the truck box. If it's not a truck, it should go into a different kind of box instead.
How do you tell your kid to clean up on Shabbos?
I mean, personally, I don't bother.
Yes. Okay, your wife does then, I guess.
No, not at all. I'm a very firm believer. They're only going to play with these things again. So let them just play and let them wallow in their own mess from week to week. That's what I say. No, what's the chat again? How do you get your kids to clean up? So they need to be taught on Shabbos.
To clean them up. That's a
How do you tell them to clean up?
How do you tell them to clean
Oh,
up?
well, you come in with your whip, and you really shouldn't have to tell them anything. They should realize that, oh, look, Daddy's here. We need to clean up. Or, oh, Daddy's here. What are you looking at me like that for?
I'm just admiring.
My parental technique.
Yes.
For sure. I don't know why they don't let me give classes on education over here. I really don't know. It's very, very strange. No, in my house, I always tell my kids, right? If you don't want to know the answer, don't ask the question. That seems to be like a very, very basic rule of thumb that children should be taught. Like my kid will come in and say, Daddy, do I have to go to sleep? And I'll say, oh my gosh, it's 11:30 at night, and Mummy said you were supposed to go to bed at 9:30, and yeah, you have to go to sleep.
Wait,
and he'll
come to
say,
class every morning.
huh? If you don't want to hear the question, don't answer. If you don't want to hear the answer, don't ask the question. And then he'll start screaming and crying, I don't want to go to sleep, I want to go to sleep. So I tell him, I think you're a moron. You're a complete and absolute blithering moron, because if you, what did you ask the question for if you didn't want to hear what the answer was? Why did you ask? that didn't seem to calm them down very much for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, we have a very simple bedtime method in my home, especially if my wife is not home, is that they can stay up until they hear the key in the door, and then they have to go whizzing into their beds and pretend to be asleep. That's how we do it in my house. It works pretty well. Anyway, you've got to teach children before Shabbos. You have to teach children the concepts of boira. You have to teach them how it's okay to clear up the toys, how it's not okay to clear up the toys.
3 or 4-year-old.
Oh, okay.
The concept of boira, yeah.
Okay, so at that point, then maybe it's better to wait until after Shabbos and either do it yourself or have them do it on Sunday if it's too late or something. I'm not quite sure. The kid's too young to be able to understand that they should not be gathering together.
So you could just say clean up. You don't have to say, clean up the cars, clean up this. Clean up.
Just clean up, yeah.
In order you won't have a problem about it.
You won't have any problem at all because they won't do it. No? Am I missing something? I forgot you're from Switzerland, right? Your children are probably well brought up and yes, and very well behaved, I'm sure. Although you're married to an American, no?
Made of chocolate.
Yes.
So there go the genes. Finished. Okay. Finished. Okay. What do you do if you've got something in front of you and you're only interested in one of the things, but a bowl of soup, right? Soup has got chicken in it, it's got vegetables in it, but right now you just want the soup, but you don't want it. You're not going to eat the vegetables right now. However, you will eat the vegetables or you will eat the chicken afterwards. Some people like to eat the chicken from the soup, after boiled chicken. So that's okay, right? It's okay to use. It's even though there is a disagreement amongst the various authorities, but it is, according to Rabbi Yashiv, it is okay to take the soup and leave the vegetables and the chicken behind, drink the soup and then eat the vegetables and the chicken afterwards. That's okay. Even though it's separating food from food, nevertheless, Rabbi Yashiv said because you're planning to eat it, then it's okay to do that.
If you're not planning to eat it.
If you're not planning on eating, it's a problem.
So you can't have the soup, the liquid itself.
Say that again?
So you can't have the liquid by itself.
You can't have the liquid by itself. You've got to be sure that you're taking some of whatever it is together with it. Right? So for example, again, it's pretty hard to spoon soup, which is like, soup with lots of vegetables in it. It's pretty hard to spoon just the liquid into the soup. I'll try that again, even though I don't think anybody really cared that what I said made no sense whatsoever. It's pretty hard to ladle out only the liquid from the soup and not have any of the bits and the pieces. Once you've got some of the bits and pieces, that's okay. Then there's not a problem of boire. If you're planning on eating it afterwards, then it's not a problem. You can have the soup and you can have the chicken from the soup afterwards, and that is absolutely fine. What do you do? Again, just an interesting dimension of boira over here. What do you do when you've got a plate with two different kinds of food on them, or maybe even the same kind of food that's been cooked in two different ways?
So like fish and salmon.
Pardon?
Like a fish cake and a piece of salmon.
Let's say fish cake and salmon, or even salmon that's been boiled and salmon that's been broiled. Boiled and broiled. You know what the difference is between the two, no? Yes? An R. The only difference is an R. One is boiled and the other's got broiled. Grilled, right? You can have boiled salmon, you can have grilled salmon, right? Halachically, boiled salmon and grilled salmon are considered to be two different foods, even though they're both salmon, right? What do you do over there? You're interested in the grilled salmon, you don't want the boiled salmon. You're interested in the boiled salmon, you don't want the grilled salmon. If you separate them, that's a problem of boira. What do? You have to take from the plate whatever you want without making an active separation. It was just, all thrown onto the plate together, and you can choose whatever you want. If you've got a plate where things are separated up into different piles, so you've got on your plate, you've got a pile of of boiled salmon, and a plate of grilled salmon, and you've got a plate, maybe there's also fish cakes there as well, right? Then at that point, that's not considered to be a problem, and each one is obvious that it belongs in its own pile, even if they're touching each other, and then there's no problem over there. There's no Indian of boira at all. Does anybody have any questions? Because this would be a good moment to ask them, because I think we've kind of come to the end of boira. So,
What's bora?
I would tell you, but it's too complicated to give over here in this class. Yes. Thank you.
Is there a common utensil when there are, in the example of the boiled and broiled, the serving utensil, is it interchangeable, or are they separate? Are there two utensils?
I don't think it makes any difference, actually, which means so long as it's fish and fish, or it's meat and meat, and just not fish and meat together, then I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever for the halachas of boira, whether you're using the same serving piece to pick up one piece or pick up the other piece. I don't think it makes any difference at all. Okay, so it's like one of these awkward silences.
I'm thinking of a question. Hey, why do we read the Torah portion on Shabbat?
Well, because if you separate the edible from the non-edible,
He said this is time to ask questions.
why do we read the Torah portion on Shabbat? So the emphasis is like this: we read the Torah portion 3 times a week, right? On Shabbat and on Monday and Thursday. The Gemara says halach l'Moshe miSinai, in order to stop there from being more than 3 days when the Torah is not read. Why do we read more on Shabbat than we do during the week? It's simply because there's more time. There's more time on Shabbos to be involved in spiritual pursuits, and listening to the Torah portion is something which is a very spiritual dimension. It's a very important dimension of the Shabbos davening, and that's why we read much more than we do during the week. Interestingly enough, I think we spoke about this once. There was a difference in customs between Babylonia, and Eretz Yisrael. In Babylonia, they had the custom to finish up the Torah reading in a year. The cycle was 1 year like we have today. In Eretz Yisrael, it took 3 years to finish up the Torah cycle. And that meant that they were reading a lot less each week than we read today.
Was it sort of even Monday, Thursday, Shabbat, or was it more on Shabbos? If it was less?
Oh, no, it was always going to be more on Shabbos than there is during Mondays and Thursdays. The Gemara talks about, what's the minimum that needs to be read in order to fill the obligation to read on Monday and Thursday. But Shabbos always had a longer Torah reading than it would have during the middle of the week. Whatever, Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow maybe we'll talk about preparing food. Different ways of preparing food. If you've got to prepare things like salads and egg salads and
Practical demonstration.
Depends on the traffic. Good. Okay.